So hello, good evening, everybody. My name is Sarah Travers, and I'm thrilled once again to have been asked to facilitate these extremely useful webinars by, I suppose, some of our leading organisations in Northern Ireland, EY, Allstate and Herbert Smith Freehills. They've amalgamated over the last year and a bit to bring, I suppose, some useful insights into the changing workplace, the future workplace, and helping prepare young people, especially whenever the homeschooling was going on. How do you prepare your young person for the next phase of their lives? They're going to spend a lot of time at work. What's that trajectory going to look like? Who knows at this stage? But hopefully we'll shed some light into what's happening right now in these three organisations, and we'll have a fantastic overview from Neil Gibson there, who will give us a little bit of an economic overview, what is happening out there, and we're looking forward to that. And this is the fifth webinar in this series. There are other subjects that we have covered, a whole host of other subjects, and at the end of this session we put out a poll and we will try and gauge from you what you would like us to cover next. But this webinar tonight, over the next hour, is really targeted at parents to help you, I suppose, understand the changing world that your young people are being pitched into. Sometimes against their will, sometimes they don't know what's going on at all, and how they can get started in their careers. All about the onboarding, getting them trained up, I suppose, learning, if those restrictions are still in place in some places, or if they're working remotely. But I think what we want to emphasize tonight is it's a great time to be looking for work. There are so many jobs out there and so many new jobs. And indeed, this pandemic has revealed how important technology is. And there are so many fabulous tech jobs out there, to name but a few. So what I'm going to do right now is stop talking and introduce our panelists for this evening. So we have with us from EY, Neil Gibson. We have from Allstate, Darren Henry, and from Herbert Smith Freehills, Caoimhe Powell. So Neil, if I could go to you first. You're no stranger to people in Northern Ireland. You are, of course, a great economist, but would you like to tell us your official title and what it is that you actually do?
Thank you, Sarah, and good evening, everyone. It's an absolute privilege to be with you this evening. Yes, my name's Neil Gibson and I'm EY's Chief Economist on the island of Ireland. So I help all of our clients across the island with whatever the economy and society might throw up. I'm also a visiting professor at Ulster University, and also, most importantly for this evening, a proud dad to two kids at the ages 11 and 13. I'm pretty sure that's right, plus or minus 1 year. I'm an economist, so I don't always get the ages completely right, but I think it's 11 and 13. So looking forward to the conversation this evening.
Brilliant, Neil. Thank you very much. And Caoimhe, if I could go to you next, please.
Thanks, Sarah. Hi, everybody. Also delighted to be with you this evening. I'm Caoimhe Powell, and as Sarah said, I work for Herbert Smith Freehills, or HSF, as we're sometimes known. I'm the head of disputes for HSF's alternative legal practice group in the UK and EMEA, and I manage 125 team members across our Belfast and Johannesburg hubs. Albeit most of them are working from home at the moment. And that team comprises of very recent law graduates and trainees up to very senior lawyers. And we are part of a global team, a strong global team of 350 lawyers and technologists.
So there you go. If there are any budding lawyers out there, the world of law has completely changed to what it was perhaps when my colleagues were starting out. Thank you very much to Caoimhe. And Darren, last but not least.
Good evening, everyone. And again, also delighted and humbled to be here sharing pieces of my story and some of the outlook. So as Sarah mentioned, I work for Allstate Northern Ireland. My role is a senior manager in the technology operations space. So if you want to liken us to kind of the firefighters of the IT world, we put fires out and then do a bit of analysis to understand what caused the fires. That's incident and problem management. And I manage 6 teams split between the US and here in Northern Ireland. And unlike the other two, I don't have any kids. I have a dog who probably acts like a child for most of his day, but no kids of my own.
You have a fur baby, Darren. But yes, luckily you don't have to put them through education and try and help them on the career path right now. But thank you. So a great panel with lots of insight into the world of work and the various careers that are out there within their own organizations and then some. But we thought it would be really useful for you before we kick off tonight properly. It's important to set the scene and take a look, I suppose, at the wider economic landscape at the minute and some of the impacts for our children going forward. The impacts of the past 2 years, really, what have they had on Northern Ireland? What future careers might look like for your kids? And as I said at the start, Neil has kindly put together a presentation for us to share his observations and comments with us. You've brought your crystal ball tonight, Neil.
Thank you. Yes, I have. And I will attempt to share the screen, which is my first technology test. So just give me a thumbs up, Sarah, whenever you can see that. Great. Well, look, I know most of the parents, and if there are any young people on the call, have been thinking, well, I'm looking forward to the hour, but the best bit will be the 146 slides that Neil goes through at the beginning with lots of data and numbers in it. So I can be sure to disappoint you in that, I promise. I'll stick to my 10 minutes and just give you a little flavor of the way in which the world and society is being reshaped by the circumstances that we find ourselves living through. But the overarching message that I'm going to give you in the next 10 minutes is never to be too alarmed by all the change and flux and worry that there can be out there. If you pick up a newspaper, oh, that's a bit old school. If you look on your phone or on your tablet and you're trying to see what's happening out there, can be overwhelming and can give you a sense of great trepidation that there is lots changing, lots disrupting, many challenges out there to face, not just pandemics, Brexit, all sorts of new climate change, technology advancement. It can be overwhelming. The most important message is that, and we work globally with all of our thousands, hundreds of thousands of clients across the world, the most significant requirement that we hear from all of them is talent and the need to get hold of talent, the need to bring you, young people, or your children, if you're a parent, into their organization to help them find their way through all these challenges and problems. So really the message from me is that what we face in terms of sets of challenges in times of great change is only a creator of problems to be solved. They need new ways of thinking. They need new people, fresh ideas. 47-year-old chief economists like me need the young, talented people coming in to follow them and actually bring fresh thinking and new ways of doing things. And I could give you loads and loads of statistics of just how much the world has changed. But I just thought I'd pick a few out to set the flavor for this evening. We've all heard about how tough it was for the economy, shrinking about 10% in most developed markets before, thankfully, bouncing back quite strongly this year and into next. Most economies, Northern Ireland included, expected to get back to their previous pre-pandemic size by perhaps the end of this year or certainly at some point during next. But it might be back to the same size, but it won't be quite the same shape or nature as it was before then. We saw the government step forward in a way that was never imagined by almost anyone. We saw in a place of Northern Ireland with under 900,000 workers, we saw 200,000 of them or close to that on the furlough scheme, effectively having their wages paid by the government. We had 70,000 self-employed people claiming self-employed support from the government. We had, you put on top of that all the public sector workers, and you get a real sense of just how important government has been and that funding and support that's been available. And that's important because government, public service is a very big career opportunity for many of you, but it's also important because it's brought together a closer collaboration between the private and public sector, a greater way of thinking about some of the problems in a more societally focused, I nearly got that right, way. We've also taken on huge amounts of debt as countries. We've had to print tons and tons of money to try and find our way around this problem, to keep paying all those people that support money. And that fundamentally leaves the economy with some big challenges. How on earth am I going to balance those books in the future? And I'll give you one little soundbite number to help you think about that. In somewhere like Northern Ireland, for example, the health budget is over £8.5 billion. Just running the hospitals is about £3.9 billion. And our entire income tax in Northern Ireland is about £2.8 billion. So if we used all of our income tax, we couldn't fund our hospitals. Now that's being a bit dramatic, I know, but it gives you a sense of just the scale of challenge and problem is out there. So that might seem like another one of those news stories I talked about being a little bit negative and alarming, but actually that's really where the bad news ends. We've seen house prices grow. We've seen all the newspaper headlines of shortages of lorry drivers to hospitality workers to tech workers. There's a shortage of talent. There are all firms out there looking for people. And we've had a very profound period of reflection and thinking about what's important to us, important as citizens, important as parents, important as business leaders, policymakers. So what actually matters in a society? And that's starting to lead to a real re-imaging of the sort of future that we want, one that balances our income and our success in the business world with how we look after the planet around us, how we look after our loved ones, how we care for our elderly, how we educate our young. There's a much greater conversation now about saying that what we really aspire to is a sense of well-being and a success that's beyond just profit and loss. But we have to have successful businesses. We have to have successful firms to generate that tax that we need to help us do those other things. And we can look at all the statistics about, has the world really changed? And the truthful answer to that is, in some ways, yes, but in many others, it hasn't at all. The future that you grow up into and your kids find a job in will have some of what was in the world before 2019 and the pandemic was even known about. It will have some of the characteristics of the world we live in today and a very significant smattering of things that none of us on this call can imagine, crystal ball or not. We will have different jobs, different roles, different tasks that we simply can't imagine as we sit here today. We will think differently of government. We'll think differently of how we socialize. We will think differently of how we shop, but yet we'll still have a huge value on being with other people, on being entertained, being inspired. There'll be so much of what we had held precious will come back to us. It's a lot of what makes us who we are. We live differently. We're thinking about where we live, what sort of house we want, how we look after ourselves. I like the fact that there was a statistic saying 41% of adults had gained weight during the pandemic, and I thought I'd put at least one stat up there that I could genuinely say from experience is true. I would also say that we can think of some of the things that we might be tackling, and many of you will imagine them. Climate change would be a very obvious one, but that's just one of the wrestles that firms are having with as they look forward and try to plan ahead. Well, how do we do things digitally? How do we, as Darren mentioned, put out new fires, deal with new risks, deal with new challenges that come thereof? There's lots of tension politically, locally, politically across the world. We're hearing people talking about wanting to do less shipping around the world and narrow in their markets. Lots and lots of change. And to tackle that, firms are thinking about what way did they narrate their story. And I know to all three of the firms with you this evening, our purpose, value, and culture is incredibly important to us and the story we tell to try and reach the talent that you have to offer to us. So it's very much a changing world in which who you are and the talent you bring is a very important component of the future that you have and that you help to shape, not just the qualifications that are on your CV. And the job numbers are growing. When we look at the data, new strategies in Northern Ireland, I could have done this further afield, the 10X strategy, the skills strategy, talking about green jobs, inclusive jobs, innovative jobs. Innovation is a huge theme of the economy at the moment, this problem solver theme. But I don't want anyone taken away from this, that this is a world of cyber tech only. The world would be, I often say, we need economists in EY, and we certainly do. But the world would be a rather dull place if it was filled only with economists. We still need poets, artists, people to inspire us, people to write great plays, people to write great TV series. We need people to deliver our produce. We need people to design our gardens. We need people to decorate our homes. Every job is valuable and important to make a society function. In EY and in Allstate, in Herbert Smith, we have all an important role, from our executive assistants to our cleaning staff to our estates people to our marketing people. The world functions on a mix of talent, and it's one of the most important messages I would leave you with as a scene setter. I could take you through all sorts of sectoral growth trajectories and areas in which we expect to see growth, but the bottom line is I could take you around Northern Ireland to brilliant firms, successful firms in absolutely every sector. We're lucky enough to do an Entrepreneur of the Year program, and we see businesses in agri-food, in construction, in retail, who are doing fabulously well. So you shouldn't let anything from the pandemic or the life that you've lived over the last 18 months give you any sense of what you think might be a successful career, or when your kids are talking to you about a job they might want. What you think of that job may not be how it's going to shape out in the next 2 years. All jobs are valuable to drive a society forward. And the advice I would give, and the message that the economy and the conversations that we have, the data that we see, would be, firstly, there won't be anyone listening to this call that doesn't have a talent to bring. And there will be firms out there desperate to get hold of that talent. And to do that, you need to keep the things that are true to you, to your character. You need to be a good listener, good at conversations. You need to bring a lot to the table beyond just the skills that you have. Because if anything, as I stare down the barrel of 50, I can look back and think you're still learning all the time about how to do things better. And you do that by listening, by experiencing, by watching others do things well, and constantly being willing to develop and to learn. And I think that's really the theme of what the skills landscape is to me at the moment. It's one of partnership, one in which we as firms need your talent as much as you need the jobs that we have to offer. But it's a bit of a partnership to make that marriage work too. We will do everything in our power to find you and find your talent and how you will fit in our organizations, and plenty of others like us. But you have to meet us halfway. We have to know you exist. We have to know who you are. We have to know what sort of character and talent you bring to the table. So being able to tell your story of what you bring and who you are, yes, what you studied, but what's important to you, what values you bring, what questions you have, that's a very important part of the story. We may have a more technical and automated world, but what we also have is a world in which the individual matters. You can look at your courses, you can look at your fundamentally, the most important message is your child, or if you're a young person listening to this, you are who you are, and you're bringing something to that table. It's about finding that right match. And the important message from the economy, having lived through some of the toughest economic times in the last 18 months, the conversation that almost every client meeting starts with that I'm on is about talent. Leadership talent, graduate talent, apprentices, staff, support staff. It's all about where can I get the people that will drive my business forward. So despite all those challenges, no shortage of employment opportunities there, but you have to do your bit to help make sure that your talented story is told in a way that those organizations will be able to see you for the talented person that you are. It's not always as straightforward as just listing what you've done. You have to find a way to be able to tell an organization who you are, what you're capable of doing, and how much you want to be part of the journey going forward. So I'm looking forward to the conversation. I hope that little bit of scene setting is valuable. Given that we're talking about talent, I look forward to seeing some of you, but I should give a shout out to both Eve Bannon and Catherine Doyle, who actually did all the talented work on the slides. I just get the joyous bit of presenting them. So in the interest of talking about talent, those two young people did all the hard work for those slides today. Thanks very much. And I'll hand you back to Sarah.
Thank you so much, Neil. So you get all the glory, but yes, thank you. I mean, what was brilliant there for me and what I took away was, developing a young person, or developing, if there are young people tuning into tonight, it's so important that they do so much more than just study. It's developing those soft skills, it's the volunteering, and all of those opportunities were affected during the pandemic as well. So it wasn't as easy maybe to get involved in drama, it wasn't as easy to get that part-time job, but it's as much experience, I suppose, that you can get in all different avenues that that adds to your USP when you go looking for a job? What would be so useful for us right now, of the 223 people that are joining us this evening, it'd be great to know who you are, where you're joining us from, if you wanted to pop into the chat, and you know what stage your young person is at, or what the particular query that you have might be, or why you came here tonight in the first place. What answers were you hoping to seek? So if you want to have a little think about that, and pop some questions in for the panelists. And don't worry, there's no such thing as a stupid question. Ask anything and we will do our very best to answer them. Darren, if I bring you in at this stage, from what you saw there with Neil's presentation, what were your takeaways?
Where to start, Sarah? How long have we got? I mean, first of all, fantastic presentation, and you know, for everyone who put that together, I think that does a really good job of realistically but positively summing up where we are, and I think, you know, where things are going from here on out. A couple of things I double down on, and maybe to use my words, inclusive diversity. It's not just about what you've done, it's about who you are. It's bringing your diversity of thought, your diversity of background and experience to a workplace, to an employer. And I can't stress enough how important that is. You know, and as much as we interview for technical talent, we absolutely look at fit, and, you know, is this someone who wants to be part of a team, and you know, things like that. And that diversity piece is a huge part of what we look for. And you know, it has to be that mix of talent. I'd say that's you know, that's probably the first thing. And you touched on kind of where the economy is going. You know, Northern Ireland and Belfast specifically is a hub for technical, and I'm maybe just looking at it from an IT perspective. I should probably take a broader focus, but it's probably indicative of other industries as well. You know, it's becoming a booming hub for IT talent. We're one of Europe's biggest software locations. You know, we have a cyber center of excellence here in Belfast, and there's just so much growth in our industry and market. And again, you know, we're crying out for people who have a passion for it and you know, want to join. So I'll probably leave it there, but probably the two biggest things I've taken away.
Brilliant. Okay, and Caoimhe, what about you?
Yeah, just great to hear obviously about the growth. That's what we're experiencing in our business. We're actively growing our teams at present. I totally agree with Neil that there are lots of opportunities out there, and we have such a need for talent, and we're really trying to find that. And so it's about selling yourself, which sometimes we're not great at. But you know, you really need to get into that interview, show what your talent is, show why you stand out, or you know, that's what your child would need to do in terms of what makes you different from other people competing for roles. You know, think about transferable skills. So anything, you know, languages are important across all sectors. Interest in technology is key across many sectors, including legal and what we do, and just setting out your interests. I think sometimes people don't maybe do enough research. That's something you can help with when your children are applying for courses, for jobs, really to understand what it is the firm that you're applying to does, and trying to understand the role, and making sure you have done as much resource as possible so that you can ask some questions as well, and yeah, embrace all opportunities that you can. There's lots of skills outside of the academics that are really, really important, and one is communication. And so obviously, like you said, Sarah, there hasn't been as much opportunity to be part of dramas and networks and all types of extracurricular activities, but when the opportunities for those things return, I think it's really, really good to encourage our young people to become as involved as possible. And it's obviously been much harder in recent times in terms of learning with not being all together, but I think it's really key to think about what you can offer to a business and what you would like to get out. So it's, you know, being clear in any development areas, that's fine, always keen to really hear that and what a transition would look like for you, but it's also really good to just be as authentic as you can, and make sure you're really prepared for any interview. They're generally for applying for university applying for roles, even very junior levels, they're generally competency based, and there's actually a lot of preparation you can do for interviews. And I think that's something that parents can help young people with.
Well, we might come back to that, Caoimhe, because I think those would be great tips. You see, the problem is at the minute, I suppose, so many parents haven't been able to get into the schools at all, to have parent-teacher meetings, to maybe, you know, talk to the careers teacher. It's all changed, and you know, some of those restrictions are still in place. The questions are coming in thick and fast, which is great. Keep them coming. I am going to get to them very shortly, but you know, I'd love to hear just about our panelists' career journeys to date, not terribly long here, just to sort of show that what you think you're starting out going to do doesn't necessarily mean that's where you end up. And, you know, maybe your careers will take on, you know, other twists and turns before you decide you're going to retire and go off to wherever it is to put your feet up. But Caoimhe, I'll start with you because I finished with you the last time. Tell us a wee bit about your journey to date, career-wise, and any turning points for you in the career that got you to where you are today.
Thanks, Sarah. So I started out training, well, undertook university in England, did some training in England and had my first qualified post there. That was at a time where there wasn't just as many opportunities in Northern Ireland. Thankfully, that changed with lots of companies like HSF who had opened the onshore operation, and that led to lots of opportunities for me. I actually had turned down a promotion within my firm in Manchester to come back to Northern Ireland, which was obviously a big risk. It involved a more junior role, quite a salary reduction, but I took the risk that this firm would offer me opportunities, and thankfully it has paid off. I started out 10 years ago almost in HSF in a solicitor role. I had to be brave and embrace opportunities, and that was really a couple of key turning points for me. One was being a little bit of a home bird and working hard to get back to Northern Ireland, taking the opportunity to go on a secondment to Perth in Australia, which was absolutely amazing. Quite a scary prospect in terms of growing a team very quickly to about 55 in about 9 months, and also sort of moving my home life again. But it was an absolutely amazing thing. The location wasn't always going to be Perth, so lots that had to be considered, but just, you know, taking that opportunity led to further opportunities, and actually a promotion to a senior manager, which was a new role. And I think that's something that Neil drew out, that we don't always see what roles they're going to be. And I think that can be within a business. I think, you know, over the next couple of years, there'll be roles that I don't even see in my practice that business need and client request will mean that further opportunities arise. A second turning point was I got asked to do a further secondment to London. So again, on the move, but this time it was to our e-discovery and technology team. And that was quite a stretch for me in terms of it wasn't really in my career plan to leave sort of the pure law side and go and manage a team more on the technology side. And there was also the challenge that I didn't have the expertise that some of the team had. But that really allowed me to understand the business better. It really allowed me to, one, meet a need that the business had, but also the business invested in me, and I gained a lot of experience from that move. It was probably seen as risky by some colleagues and peers in terms of it seemed like I was going down a different path. But actually what it has led to me is coming back more into the sort of mainstream legal practice of our practice group. But I don't think I would have been able to have done that as easily without that exposure to the whole sort of parts of our business. So I guess the key there is it hasn't been a sort of linear trajectory. I've had quite a few sort of lateral moves along the way, quite a few sort of different opportunities that I really had to consider and I didn't actually anticipate. But I think it paid off. A younger me probably wouldn't have taken those, you know, risks or opportunities, but I think they've paid off. And I think it's really important, because one opportunity can lead to another, or you might find actually you enjoy a different part of, you know, a potential career, maybe a slightly different career path is for you. And although I didn't find that, other colleagues have. We have lots of people that transition from legal to technology, for example. So that's a bit of a whistle stop tour of my last 10 years, but definitely one that has been quite varied.
I think it's very exciting, and I love that. I also heard somebody else I was speaking to earlier today that behind every door of opportunity, there's another 10 doors of opportunity. But if you don't open it, you'll never know what's in there. But you know, years ago, that's not the way I would have been brought up. You were supposed to have a job for life, and you looked around, and you know, where were you going to be forever? And I did do 20 years with BBC Northern Ireland, you know, and I did think at the time, oh, there we go, I'll rest. But inevitably you get the itchy feet, and what could I do next? So it's all about that personal and professional growth. Darren, what about you? Tell us about your journey to date.
And I actually have kind of been keeping a half an eye on the chat here, so I'm going to try and work in some questions, people. So I was going to do sports science. I was going to go to England. I was going to do sports science, and then I had some personal family issues that kept me in Northern Ireland, so I decided to take a year out. On that year out, I started working for a company I'd never really heard of before called Allstate Northern Ireland. 13 years later to this day, I think actually this is my 13th anniversary, I'm still with Allstate Northern Ireland. So I think first point for me was I never planned to be in IT until I got in to a role and understood what was possible in the field of IT. I had no intention of being in this industry. And boy,
so did you not study? What did you study to, you know?
I did PE, biology. I did ICT at A level.
Right.
So, you know, I had done some, but I had no intention of
PE, biology and ICT, and now you're working in Allstate. Okay, good.
Yeah. So just for, you know, diversity, I thought that I didn't go to uni. I didn't do a computer science degree. I kind of got in at an entry-level job in Allstate, and probably, you know, in the last 13 years, I've probably done 1 or 2 courses a year. You know, I've continued to further my knowledge in my industry. But probably for me, one of the key messages there is I didn't plan to be here. So, you know, my journey is for the first 6 years, I did a lot of technical roles. I was server engineer. I worked in incident management. I'd done a couple of, you know, different jobs. Always try to stretch my knowledge and kind of learn as I went. I was always and still am very hungry for knowledge, but it was more technical at that stage in my career. And by, you know, 5-6 years ago, then maybe 6.5 years ago, my manager at the time asked me, you know, have you thought about a career in IT leadership? Have you thought about stepping into that? So it was very uncomfortable for me at the start, as I'm sure, I don't know, Keith, if you would attest that, but I know for me it was very uncomfortable moving from kind of where you're the master of your own destiny to actually these people rely on me to be supportive of them, to encourage their career and their growth. And I think what I've come to find about my journey is I'm not in it for me anymore. I'm really in it to help other people succeed and you know, get to their objectives. Selfishly, that then helps me in the back end, but you know, that's not why I'm in it. And if you'd asked me 13 years ago, would this be where I'd be, you know, sitting and you know, talking to this group? Absolutely not. So just to reinforce the message that behind every door and opportunity you take is maybe a different path or a different set of doors. You know, I can absolutely attest to that.
So absolutely a bit of a theme going on here, and for everybody listening and tuning in, you know, even developing those leadership skills and those management skills. And it's really that, you know, when you're working within such a big organization, there are so many opportunities too once you get in there. Neil, we'll go to you and then we're going to take all of these questions. So your journey to date?
Yes, I was, it's been interesting listening to the other panelists. I was very happy in my part-time job at a leading frozen food emporium in Northern Ireland. Other brands are available, but it was fabulous, and I was desperate to become a manager there. Loved it, absolutely loved it. I had the most inspiring manager I've ever worked for, actually. Then, well, no, don't say that. I have current managers; they're great too. But it was fabulous, and I really wanted to continue that. I wasn't sure about the studying route. I was doing an economics degree at the time, went on a placement year, and then it all changed for me in a research center. That then changed. I went and set up my own business. Then I decided to go into academia, I think because I like the sound of my own voice, and I wanted to do something to teach, to educate. And then Brexit came along, and again, you know, a real crisis and challenge, but presented an opportunity. EY, who had been working with for years, had said, look, we need a role to help us across the island. And that relationship I'd built up for years, decade or more, then came to fruition. So a couple of sort of lessons of my journey that I would take for myself was, you know, I flippantly make the joke that my late father used to say, look, son, you have two skills in life, talking and eating, and you better find someone that can pay you to do one of them. But what I did know was I loved talking to people. Some would say at them, but I do love talking to people and listening to stories, seeing if we can help, seeing if we can do something to help that. And I suppose the big point I would make to parents or to young people, I want to touch on one question in the context of this. We as employers have a responsibility to answer some of the frustration that people have rightly remarked on, that this has been such a difficult year for young people who maybe have a gap because they couldn't get a placement or because they came out of college or school and there was no jobs to go to. It is absolutely imperative on all of us, and I know all three firms represented on this call do, that we ignore that year in the conversation when we're looking at people because you simply didn't have those options. It's very important to speak to young people that is not a year that they have to explain away. Nobody's going to be confused about the COVID year. Just be honest about what opportunities that you didn't have. We must do extra more. Oh, terrible English, Neil. We have to do more to make sure that we reach those people who've had a tough time. But the real message that I would compliment to other speakers on is this idea of building up relationships as you go along. The people that you help, you study with, you're at school with, the colleagues that you make, friends that you make, people that you work with, you build up a relationship that they can rely on you and that you learn from them. Down the line, it could be years later before that relationship turns into a business deal or a conversation about an employment opportunity. So basically take the most out of every little period of time. I didn't know that my ability to lead would be so much shaped by my years working under a fabulous manager in a frozen food store, but they were. So you will be going through experiences now. Even the difficulty of this COVID year will have provided experiences and learning and built new relationships potentially. Could be a closer relationship with parents or people in your closer family circle that'll stand you in good stead later. But I think it is incredibly important that I can trace some of my journey to opportunities that I was given as a part-time job or on a placement that maybe haven't been available in the last year or two. And that's something that rests heavy with me, and I know with a lot of organizations, to make sure we redouble our efforts. I mean, we're delighted to say EY's an announcement today in the news of 800 more jobs on the island of Ireland. So we have to look at those people who didn't have the opportunity last year and not look at them differently. It's such an exciting opportunity. My dog's even barking every time I say new jobs. You can hear him in the background. So look, I think building relationships, a little bit of effort on our behalf too, and also recognizing that you'll learn a lot in different working environments and social environments that you don't even realize how much you're taking out of that helps you to be a leader or business decision maker later in life.
Well, there's so many questions coming in, and that gap year, that gap that, you know, is actually the same for everyone. But when you hear that firms like EY are looking for 800 people, you know, how do you make sure that you even get an interview? And some people have asked here, you know, what skills should we be developing? Caoimhe, you touched on interview skills, or, you know, how do you get to sit in a job interview if there could be potentially, you know, I don't know how many applicants you would get for 800 jobs, but I'd say an awful lot. How do you get even into that entry? Is that such a thing?
Yeah, I think it's, you know, setting out your CV clearly, as concisely as possible, you know, just to hold the reader's attention. That's really important. It's surprising how many CVs we receive that are, you know, really very long. Assuming there's no sort of technical assessment. If there is, you know, try and prepare as best you can, although appreciate that's difficult. But in terms of getting first noticed, it is highlighting any skills that you have. You know, think about that business, do your right research, think about what they would need. Would they need languages? So for example, for global companies, often that is needed. Are they a tech-enabled firm? Or are they a law firm in the sort of technology or legal services space? So be thinking about any other skills, as I said, that you can present, really showing anything that would highlight your communication skills, because obviously that's really key. Anything that you have around understanding how businesses operate when you're at that junior end. And I guess doing your research to show that what you know about the company and what you want to get from it, but why you have chosen that law firm. It's not just about us understanding, it's what you know about us and why you want to join us. You know, there's lots of people applying, but why us? There's also lots of opportunities, so why us?
Well, Tracy had asked there that her daughter's just starting secondary school, looking for a roadmap of what skills and opportunities. So just at that early stage to help her grow the desirable talent from firms like yourself. So just keep doing as much as you can, and then start maybe seeing and doing your research on these particular firms. Maggie asks for some advice on accessing work experience for a young person in lower sixth, please. Work experience, you know, insurance around work experience placements, restrictions. How do you get work experience right now? Darren, what's the policy in Allstate, or what would your advice be on that?
That's a very good question, Sarah. And I would say that's probably one of the areas that's been the hardest in terms of normal business operations, right? Because there are implications that are outside of, you know, employers' control, like insurances and things like that. But we haven't stopped looking for the talent. You know, we haven't stopped looking for trying to fill the roles that are out there. So I would say continue to stay connected. Neil, you know, talked about building relationships. Reach out on LinkedIn, reach out on, you know, some of the more formal channels if you don't know anyone in some of these big corporates. You know, we continue to run programs, but as I think about the IT industry as well, right? It's not a job. It's not, you don't work in IT. You work in a field with data scientists who specialize in maths, and marketing experts who, you know, have more creative flair, and programming language type people who are building applications. So really, whatever your child is interested in, or as a young person, whatever you're interested in, make sure you're starting to build some of those relationships that you talked about, because I really would double down on that. It's really important.
Do you need coding or anything like that?
For work experience, no, it's not. You're not coming in with a full gambit of pre-experience or technical qualifications to get into work experience, to get a flavor for what it is.
And talk to me about apprenticeships as well in that sort of sector. Would an IT firm like yourselves or Allstate, would they take on somebody without a university degree?
I'm not actually, to be very honest, I'm not sure what this year's program is, but I know, you know, in the last 3 or 4 years, we've, as Allstate, have done programs to convert people who had geography degrees, or, you know, maybe had previously left the workplace, maybe to raise children or things like that. So Allstate have done various different schemes and apprenticeships to bring people on board. And I would say each company is probably doing a flavor or some flavor of those. So, you know, that might also help with your kind of atypical recruitment. And I say atypical, or kind of say the non-university route, right? Mm-hmm. So there are different options even for folks who aren't going down the university path as well.
Neil, do you know anything about that? I know there's a skills strategy, and apprenticeships was a big push. Definitely remember Diane Dodds, former economy minister, really pushing that. Is that still a big thing?
It is, yes. It's very much becoming a growing thing across, you know, it's not just for what people would have thought of in the trades business. It's now, you know, I often say that's a bad term anyway. These are all trades in their own way. And so you're seeing a lot more in professional services. There are young people for whom the working environment is a better learning environment for them than a classroom. So we're beginning to open up more and more of those pathways. We, like the others, run placements. You don't have to have that experience before, but it's also on us as employers to change people's perceptions. I was doing a thing just today with an agri-food client, and the jobs they have in technical, in design, and alongside the very obvious agri-food jobs you could imagine, they have to change the whole perception of what they are. So again, as a parent or anyone on the call, always make sure you don't, when you hear someone talking about a particular job or a particular firm, don't necessarily think, oh, that's maybe not the one. I haven't heard that brand. There will be very different types of firms with different routes. It's the experience you get. I picked a smaller firm. I shouldn't say this, but as EY's rather large, but we take people of all kinds and backgrounds and skill sets. But equally, some people go into a much smaller organization, maybe it doesn't have that brand recognition, and then develop their skills there too. So there are lots and lots of different opportunities. I also wanted to pick up one important point in the question. Somebody very rightly said you were asking about skills for CVs. And one of the things, hopefully I mentioned in my intro, is it's very important to be honest and true to the thing that you bring. And somebody said, and I speak very carefully in this subject, it's not one I have personal experience of, so I hope my language is appropriate. There was a very good question there about young people with autism, and there are lots of people, young people out there with various places on the spectrum in terms of different mental health challenges. And employers are increasingly getting better at understanding and recognizing that and seeing the absolute brilliant talent there are in people who may not be able to express themselves or go through the normal process to say, I'm great at teamwork, I've been a fabulous sports person, or whatever you might think of as what you expect to see in a CV. So the important bit that I mentioned at the beginning is make sure you sell what it is that you are and what it is that you can do and that you can bring. And everyone has that talent to bring to the party. I think it was really interesting for those who follow Formula One. George Russell, who drives for Williams, just got arguably the best seat at Mercedes, and they asked the kind of boss of Mercedes, when did he come first year come to attention? And he came in with a PowerPoint presentation of how brilliant he was and why he was going to drive for them when he, like 7 years ago. And he remembered that. And there's pictures of him meeting Lewis Hamilton when he's only so he was finding a way to tell his story that made him stand out a way down the line. So whilst I can't empathize with many of the questions that were raised about specific challenges that many young people have, what I think is the important part of this story is that sometimes we think too much about a CV or about telling the story we think they want to hear. There is a game to play, but you have to tell the story you are. The example I always give is, if you remember, the art students at school would always have had a portfolio of their work, because arts jobs were incredibly challenging to get. And the only way to show your talent was to be able to open the portfolio and say, that's what I can do. And in a way, almost all of us have to be able to demonstrate that. This is what I can do, regardless of what boxes I fill it into. Here is the talent that I can bring to your organization. So tell it in your own language, tell it in a way that speaks to the talent that you have. And I guess that's a long-winded way of saying you have to work hard at it, but there are many routes in, and nobody should feel that they have a route to the labor market being closed off. Employers, and we've a lot of work still to do, are getting better all the time at recognizing that talent comes in from many different places. And we certainly, go back 20 years, you almost always had to have an accountancy qualification for a job in the big four accounting firms. That's just changing for all of us now. You come in with all sorts of backgrounds. So I would encourage everyone to make sure they stay true to who they are and tell their story of what they're brilliant at, because there's nobody on the call that isn't.
Well, diversity and inclusion is obviously really important and being taken extremely seriously, or there will be, repercussions. It is a changed world of work, thankfully. And there's another question there about what opportunities are there for disabled, talented students who can only work part-time. But I think flexible working is something that has been a positive outcome of this pandemic. I was only hearing on the radio today about the homeschooling, the working from home, the pressures. And, there was an awful lot again about how female careers have taken a bit of a back step because of the caring responsibilities, etc. So flexible working is definitely something that employers have seen, they have to be able to offer to their staff to keep them. And there's going to be so much variety out there too, and choice that, hopefully you stand up for yourself, even if you feel part-time is the way for you. There will be somebody out there that will be able to offer you that part-time, I'm sure. A law question for you, Caoimhe, there from Lisburn. We have got Lara from Lisburn, who has a daughter starting A-levels with the hope of studying law. Is it true that you have to know or be connected to a law firm in Northern Ireland for you to get in as a young and new lawyer? That's the way it used to be.
Yeah, probably the way it used to be, but thankfully not the way it is now. I'm not at all connected, and fair enough, I took the route of qualifying in England and returning. That was literally just because friends were there and studying. But no, I think there's lots of opportunity within Northern Ireland. I know lots of people I have met through my journey who have qualified also in Northern Ireland and weren't connected. So I think it's a very, very changed world where talent and selling yourself, working really, really hard will pay off. So I wouldn't discourage somebody from doing law, on that basis. I do think there's lots of opportunities. HSF is only one of many international law firms here, and there's lots of NI firms that, just recruit from talent within Northern Ireland. So I'm happy to say that the story and the narrative on that has changed.
Okay, what about how to encourage young people who can't wait to leave Northern Ireland, which is a sad state of affairs, but there are also benefits to leaving Northern Ireland and then maybe coming back later, as we've been hearing from our panelists. But there's a lot of disillusionment out there. We've so much going on in the politics with Brexit, with politicians maybe not down at young people's levels. Who'd like to take that one? Darren, what do you think? Do you think, how do you get young people to stay here, or should they fly first?
That one's a bit charged, Sarah. No, I think what you will about Northern Ireland, right? And probably there's probably a different answer to different sectors here, right? But as I kind of touched on it earlier in my remarks, is the IT sector in Northern Ireland is one of the healthiest in the UK. Particularly Belfast, like I said, it's got CSIT in Queens, it's got a world-renowned cyber hub in Queens. We're recognized as one of the biggest and best software development sort of houses or cities in Europe. So from a Northern Ireland perspective, there's no need to leave to work in IT, and I'm sure many industries are like that, right? And even if children, young people are want to leave for different experiences, things like that, I totally get it. But there's certainly not a narrative, or maybe shouldn't be a narrative, that it's all doom and gloom in Northern Ireland. I think there's plenty here to keep young people.
Yeah, but sometimes it takes you to go away to realize that. I went to Nottingham and I couldn't wait to leave, but that was sort of the Troubles era. And once I got to the most landlocked part of England, brilliant city, but I lived by the sea up on the north coast and I so missed it. So I suddenly appreciated home, as you do, and my mummy for the washing and looking after me and all of those things. But I think it is good to fly a little. Caoimhe, would you agree with the Perth experience?
Yeah, it's great. And, some opportunities that can come your way, I've probably had more opportunities from being in Northern Ireland, and, it's just the way it happened for me. But Perth was an absolutely great experience, great to experience the HSF culture in another part of the world. Great to build a team, have that. That was probably a role where I had to have quite a lot of autonomy. Time zones and things meant there just wasn't, there's support, but it wasn't the same as what went before. I think there's lots of opportunity in Northern Ireland now. There wasn't the same opportunity when I qualified in 2009. And I think, you've got the opportunity to work for global clients from Northern Ireland for international firms across different sectors. So I think the opportunity has never been greater.
Yeah, and I suppose you could work from Northern Ireland, but be working for any company around the world too. The remote working technology has allowed for that. Neil, there are so many people that are coming and choosing to live and work in Northern Ireland. They're coming and they want jobs here because of the work-life balance, and we do have a nice country despite all of the problems.
That we do, yes. When they do those sort of quality of life and happiness surveys, Northern Ireland comes out as the highest scoring in the UK. So there is a lot. I think for those who feel disillusioned, I think in some ways you have to find your own way through that. I think the most important thing is, you want to find and lead a life that doesn't leave you disillusioned. So if that means you need to travel. The only thing I would say, and this is not to dissuade anyone from doing it, far from it, you'll find that the challenges we face in Northern Ireland are remarkably similar, albeit they may be in very different badges. The amount of economies and places wrestling with issues of class, of race, of gender imbalance, of inequalities, of social discord. It's remarkable that governing and running the sort of society you sort of aspire to when you're young is actually a much harder thing than you would think. So our issues when you travel the world feel somewhat less unique to me anyway, in that we always have a sense of struggle wherever you are about how things are divided up or how the economy is running or how society is running. And actually, some of the most fundamental issues to people are sense of safety, sense of health, education, housing. And for all of those things, Northern Ireland can score incredibly highly. So I think my advice would be, certainly you need to find a sort of an answer to your disillusionment. And for many people, that means seeing the world, traveling the world. For many, it means settling somewhere else. But for plenty, as we've heard from Caoimhe and others, it means coming back here. And for some like me, I traveled a lot with the job, global job that I had. I never wanted anything other than being in Northern Ireland ever. And that was, you know, my job now across the island. I absolutely adore and wouldn't swap it for anything. But I have friends in the US who made that choice, who are doing fabulous too. So I think the main thing is, don't try to talk the disillusionment away. See the world, travel by all means, but also keep that focus, as Darren mentioned, on things like quality of life, education, housing that you can afford, the health service that you might have, which we hear a lot of criticism of, but you'll find a lot of countries in the world where it's an awful lot worse and a lot more expensive too. So I think there's a lot to be said for here, but I think the wrong narrative is often to try and persuade a young person not to be disillusioned. You know, there's, you know, to try and teach that away. You have to live that life yourself. And then some of these real strengths of Northern Ireland come through. We're seeing many more people reaching out now to say, I would like to come to Northern Ireland, as they start to, you know, typically in our business, the big selling point is to put up an advert of a house and what you can buy with your money, which as you get later in your career, suddenly seems astonishingly attractive compared to many of the other leading cyber or technology or professional services locations. So yes, lots to offer, but we all have to find our own route to it.
I'll not ask you about the future projections of house prices here, though. So
no, this has been recorded
up here in the North Coast. There have been some very specific questions tonight, you know, about subject choices, particular combinations. One there from Alice talking about her daughter taking chemistry, biology and maths for A-levels. What jobs are relevant to these subjects? I think Darren highlighted that, you know, you can take these subjects, I think as long as you love the subject and you're good at the subject, you know, you can still do so much with something. It might be the maths that you focus on, or the chemistry. So yes, I suppose it's useful to see where would these subjects be applicable, but don't limit yourself in that way. Again, it's choosing those organizations that would be great to work for, or developing the entrepreneurial spirit. Somebody else said, would it be good to study business? I'd say that would be a great one as well, to give you all sorts of options. Oh my goodness, where did that last hour go? We have literally flown through. A very entertaining comment there from Paul Conroy. And Neil's dog was correct when he barked. None of us have been through anything like this before, so we all need to sit, pause, spelled P-A-W-S, and take the lead with guiding our kids. That, or else the Neil's dog wants a walk. So I think that's a very nice and witty comment to finish up on. The world of work, it has changed so much. A final thought from each of you. Caoimhe, are you working from home now pretty much all the time?
Yes, still at home the majority of the time. I had a couple of days in the office last week. We will be transitioning to sort of basically a hybrid model, probably on average about 60% of the time in the office. We're very lucky to have had an office refurb recently, which will allow us to work on a sort of more agile way. So being in the office when there's tasks that mean it would be great to be together, and, you know, great to collaborate together. And then obviously days at home where maybe you want to concentrate on, you know, getting your head down on particular pieces of work.
So hybrid, definitely the way forward for you, Darren. What's Allstate doing?
I think very much of the same. And, you know, we've probably taken this opportunity to not just look at the talent around our 3 centres in Belfast area and Strabane, but more broadly in Northern Ireland, more broadly in the UK, and even maybe further afield. So, you know, we're very much going to have that hybrid model into the future. We're still mostly remote at the minute, but, you know, it's very much going to be a future of flexibility, I think, in our industry.
Yeah, so very different. And Neil as well. I suppose it's all good for, you know, less commuting, good for the environment too, and climate's going to be such a biggie. Loads of jobs, loads of people are doing geography at the minute. I think the climate is going to be a great place to get a job.
Yes, it certainly will be. It'll be there'll be a job related to that in every firm very shortly. Yes, hybrid working too for EY, but I think all of us are still finding our way in this, and certainly for a business like all of ours with young people particularly, we have to remember that what we know now at our stage of our career, sorry, I can't speak for the others. At my age, I'm a lot older than the other two. You forget easily what you learned just by being proximate to other people, seeing and observing good behavior. So I was down in Dublin last week meeting some of our new staff in the economics team. That was lovely to actually see them and to be able to reassure them about the support that, we do it as best we can remotely, but it doesn't feel quite the same as being able to take someone out for a lunch or chat to them in the office and make sure they feel reassured. So I think we're all still finding our way. And I suppose the message around that ways of working is, again, finding your voice as a young person. Even when you're just into a firm, it's important to be open with when you're feeling nervous or anxious or struggling with something. We'll all have been there at some point, and making sure you operate in a job in which that business is willing and always willing to listen to your opinion. Because just because, like our staff said, mostly hybrid working is great, going well, but after 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, or a long winter, you might feel differently about that. And I think it's important for everyone on the call to remember it's okay to change your mind, either about the way of working or the career that you're doing, the subject, the future that you're going to take. It's okay to change your mind. Your life will take many turns.
Always speak up. That's a brilliant point to end on. Nobody needs to be alone, and we have to keep looking after everybody. And I think to be starting out on a new job and being maybe at home or in your parents' house in a back room or something like that is not ideal. And you definitely need to say, I need a little more support. Folks, we're going to wrap up very shortly, but I'd like to, first of all, thank our panelists for a great insight into their career journeys. Thank you to Neil for his projections as to what's ahead. Some really positive takeaways that there are so many jobs out there, some of which we don't even know, they haven't been created yet. There are going to be a heck of a lot of problems to solve out there. And it's teaching your young people to be those problem solvers is really what the world needs going forward. Yeah, we want to do a quick poll with you before we leave, because we're hoping to come back again with a 6th webinar for you, but we'd like you to pick the topic if possible. Your child, their future poll. So we have for you the workplace of the future. We've touched a bit on that. Would you like that? Is hybrid working here to stay? We've just teased you with that one, but maybe you'd like more. Will we use offices in the future? In-demand skills, so what skills are needed, and how does my child stand out when applying for roles? So if we could devote an hour to one of those topics, which one would you go for? So if you want to click, we can see which one rises to the top, and we can do a bit more on that for you next time. But as we collate the results, I'm not doing any of that. I think Kira's behind the scenes and the computer will be totting up. Thanks so much to everybody who tuned in at the end of a busy day today. I hope you found it useful. I hope you found the personal stories and the honesty and realness of our panelists enlightening. Debbie there is saying, excellent event, offering a lot of insight and very thought-provoking. Thanks to all. We've got a couple of careers teachers on there, very useful. Yes, we need to maybe get this out for careers teachers. Would be excellent. Nick, thank you for those comments there. Love the message about competencies. This is a key thing many young people forget and is so important for their employers. Great stuff. We'll keep up the good work, Nick, and all the other careers teachers out there. And we will see you next time when our subject will be, can we reveal? Is there a big reveal now? If not, we will let you know.
Yeah, it seems to be that the in-demand skills are in the lead. They're 50%.
Okay. In-demand skills, we will be bringing you hopefully next time. But in the meantime, we'll let you all go. Maybe you haven't had your tea yet. And it's been lovely to be in our panelists' company, and to everybody who gave up their evening to join us. It's been great. So we'll head on now and we'll bring you in-demand skills the next time. So keep an eye out on your social media, spread the word as well when you see the posts about the next one. Can't give you a date just yet. But thanks very much and take care, everybody. Good night.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.